they know? But when they saw the star, remember, they rejoiced with exceeding joy. And I'm sure there was a worship service like you can't imagine. And Mary and Joseph must have been blown away again. What is happening with this child? And now they have these amazing gifts that they've been given that speak of his person and his ministry. And so it says in Matthew 2:13, now when they, that is the wise men, had departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, Matthew 2:13, saying, arise and take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt and remain there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to destroy him. And we're told from history that Herod was 4'4". I don't know if you knew that. And he built a ton of big things. Can you say compensation? Anyway, so he's 4'4". He builds the Hippodrome, which was for horse racing. He builds Masada, an impregnable fortress. He builds his own palace, the Herodian, a majestic palace. But his greatest feat, at least in the Jewish mind, was he built the temple. And the temple was a multi-year construction project. It probably took them, I'd say, 60 to 70 years in totality to build that thing. Somewhere around there. Major project. And Herod did it. Herod did it because he was looking to ingratiate himself with whoever he could. And since he was a political leader, and he was pretty crafty as a political leader, he knew that that would be a great gesture to the Jews. They would love him for that. And so he built that. But Herod was a sad man. And when Herod heard from the Magi that someone who was born king of the Jews had arrived, he was freaked out because Herod did not have legal right to the throne. Herod was Idumean. That simply means he was from Edom. He came from the line of Esau. And if you know the story of Jacob and Esau, you know that even in the womb, what was happening with those children? They were fighting. There was a battle. And you could see in Herod's attempt to destroy Jesus the continuation of the battle between Esau and Jacob, as Edom, if you will, tries to destroy the king of Israel. Now, there's no legal right for Herod to the throne, but he's built things and he's tried to ingratiate himself in. But now he's heard there's one born king of the Jews. Uh-oh. And we see earlier in Matthew that Herod was upset. Herod was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him, because Herod was known as a man with an anger problem. He had 9 wives, and he had done a lot of destruction. He killed his favorite wife, Mariamne, because he thought, I think there's different stories, but they were trying to get at his throne. He killed the sons that tried to hold him accountable. They said that he collected 100 people, higher echelon people, when he was about to die, and he wanted them killed at the moment that he died because he knew nobody would weep for him. So he thought, well, at least they'll be crying in the region when I die, because nobody's going to cry for me. That's the kind of person that Herod was. And when Herod heard there's one born king of the Jews, man, well, he wanted to destroy him. But he acted like he wanted to worship him. He said, hey, make a careful search for the child. This is Matthew 2:8. Go and make a careful search for the child. And when you have found him, report to me that I too may come to worship him. And all you need to write in the margin of your Bible is, you liar. He didn't want to worship Jesus. He wanted to kill him. And isn't it strange to us that someone for political purposes would say that they are a worshiper of Jesus Christ? That seems odd. I don't think that happens today. He says with a smile. And you say, well, Pastor Michael, where are we going with this? Well, here's where we're going. We've had a conflict through the ages. Herod, in this particular story, is a type of Satan. Herod takes on the role as a type of Satan because what we've had, this will explain a lot of our history and biblical history, is we've had a conflict of the ages. It goes all the way back to the book of Genesis. So if you got your Bible, Look at Genesis chapter 3 with me. Genesis 3. We'll look at a single verse called the Proto-Evangel. This is verse 15. This is right after the fall of Adam and Eve. God speaking says, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He, her seed, shall bruise you on the head, and you, the serpent, shall bruise him on the heel. What we've had in our Bibles from that point forward is a conflict between the serpent and the child of the woman. Singular, her seed. And the child of the woman, if you go to Revelation chapter 12, will be defined for us or outlined for us. And that child, Revelation 12, if you go to the maps, you've gone too far. It's the last book of your Bible. Is described in this way. Revelation 12, verse 1. And a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and on her head was a crown of 12 stars. Now there's been all kinds of commentary about the woman. The Roman Catholic Church says the woman is Mary. Mary Baker Eddy, the founder of Christian Science, says that she's the woman. A rather bold claim, wouldn't you say? But you know what? It's very clear who the woman is, because it says the sun and the moon were under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. What's that sound like to you? 12 stars. When you hear 12, what do you think of? The tribes of Israel. And if you write in your Bible, Genesis 37, 9 through 11, you will see that Joseph had a dream about this. And the dream is all about these 12 stars. They represent the 12 tribes of Israel. Now notice what happens. And she was with child, and she here comes to be Israel. And she cried out. This has been Israel's history, being in labor and in pain to give birth. Think of Genesis 3:15. And another sign appeared in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns. This speaks of his dominion and at least his influence politically and over nations. And on his heads were 7 diadems. And his tail swept a third of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she gave birth, he might devour her child. You'll see that in this setting, the dragon is Satan, and the conflict of the ages, from the book of Genesis, from the fall all the way to the end, to the book of Revelation, to the very end, Satan has been about really one thing. He wants to devour that child. Because in that child would be what? The salvation of the world. And that child would come from the line of Abraham and the line of Isaac and the line of Jacob, and he would come from the royal line of David. And that's why Matthew, in the first chapter of his book, spends all that time establishing Jesus' right to the royal throne. And if you think about history, think about the plight of the Jewish people. How do you explain the hatred for the Jewish people outside of understanding this spiritual battle that's happening? How do you explain Egypt? Remember, the Pharaoh did something similar. He saw the Hebrews increasing, and he tried to destroy the male children. Way back in the book of Exodus chapter 1. And he instructed the midwives, if it's a boy, kill the boy. Right when it's born, kill it. And the midwives wouldn't do it. They feared God too much. And they said, the Hebrew women are vigorous. This was their excuse, and I'm quoting them. They have the children before we can get there. And you know what the Hebrew midwives did? They lied. They lied. And you know what? God blessed them for it. You say, there it is. That's what I was looking for. I'm always looking for loopholes. But what that tells us in the Bible is that sometimes there's what we might call a sanctified lie. The Germans come knocking on the door. Corrie ten Boom's family. Do you have any Jews here? If you know they want to kill the Jews, what's the appropriate answer to this question? No. Because the greater good is at stake there. And God blessed the midwives. And then you start seeing history unfold. You see Assyria and Babylon and Medo-Persia and the Grecian Empire under Antiochus Epiphanes. And you see Rome. And then fast forward to our recent history with Adolf Hitler. And you say, why? And now it's Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, threatening the people of Israel, saying that he wants to blow them off the map and drive them into the sea. And he says it at speeches before the UN. And everybody goes, it's, No, he's serious. And you know what they're building in Iran right now, right? That's what all this, there's a lot of political talk about this. It's a nuclear weapon. And I mentioned to the congregation on Sunday that I turned on my television, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I saw Mahmoud Ahmadinejad shaking hands with Putin, the leader of Russia. And you know what they said they were talking about? Nuclear energy. You might want to read Ezekiel 38 and 39. Because those two nations are prominent in the Battle of Armageddon. So, this is the conflict. And here's what happens now. She gave birth to a son, Revelation 12:5, a male child who is to rule how many? All the nations with a rod of iron. That's going to be when he sets up the kingdom.